everybody. We are approaching the end of our forums for this season. We have just 3 more. They will all be good. We have them all listed and described outside the office. You can look there. And if you would like to receive the emailed announcements, please leave your email addresses on the sign-up sheets at both entrances. Today, Jean is going to give us a very unusual talk. I left out what I was going to say. I thought something's wrong. Jean has been a long-time member of the parish, and I think most of you already know him well. He has served on the standing committee and in a number of other activities. Today, he's going to give a very unusual talk. He's opened his home to a Syrian refugee family and rescued them from a very undesirable housing situation. And we thank you, Jean, for coming to share your story.
Thank you very much for being here this morning. And I just want to set this up as a conversation. We'll be talking about basically a couple of stories. First of all, let me introduce Jennifer Silverstone. Jennifer is the founder of Eyes on Refugees, the nonprofit that introduced myself and Donna to the Allo family, and that is the Syrian family that is now living with us. So what I thought we'd do is start with a little bit of Jennifer's background and story as to how she came to found Eyes on Refugees and the work that she's doing. Is there a buzz here, or is it? Why is this thing buzzing? Okay, all right, sorry. Just want to make sure that it wasn't too. I'm also deaf in one ear, so it's hard for me to hear what I'm saying. So, we've got some images, we've got a couple of little videos that we thought would add a little bit of color and context and background to
Eyes on Refugees. I am a mom of 2 boys, young boys, and when I saw the picture of that boy on the beach face down and lifeless, I'm sure like many other people, I was affected deeply, and I said, I'm going. Oh, well, nothing can really prepare you for what you'll see. So you have tents on top of tents with this tension that is just palpable. As much as you try to prepare yourself, you just can't. We were just looking at each other, trying to figure out what we could do. I realized how I've nursed in luxury. I didn't have the things that I would normally give to people. I was looking in these people's eyes and I was doing whatever I could to help them, to make them comfortable. I couldn't believe that I was living in this beautiful bubble with healthy children, a job, a husband, a house, and this was going on in the world. If you just went there and were able to look at them in the eye, everything is stripped away. You don't have to hear their stories. You can see in their eyes what they've been through, and at that moment, again, it's just human to human, and it breaks down any walls that have been built up between us, and it brings it down to a very basic level. And that's what I saw, and that's what I took away from it, and that's what I try to tell people. We are an organization, and we have a responsibility. It's just amazing what people are capable of.
Okay, so by nature I'm not a public speaker, but because of what I've become involved with, I overcome that with my passion about helping these people that I've met. So in the video, I mentioned Elaine Curdy, his body, and I'm sure all of you saw that image. And that was in the summer of 2015. And I had my head in the sand. I lived in a bubble, and my bubble was popped when I saw that image because I had a son that age. And so it really hit home with me. And I said to my husband, what are we going to do? If only they could get here. And he said, they're not going to make it here, a lot of them. So you have to stop, being depressed about it and take action because you're a doer. And so I ended up going and working in refugee camps. I went to Calais, France, Dunkirk, France, and then also in Greece to the Ido-Macedonia border during the clashes. And, it changed my life forever. And so we have a lot of international projects. We have a lot of presence internationally. But when we started to realize that refugees were being actively resettled in the United States, and that it was pretty quiet, no one really knew. It was just happening. So I had to really dig deep to find out where they were going and who was bringing them in. So in doing that, I realized that a gap was happening between when they were brought over to successful assimilation. It was just a black hole. And so I was contacted by a resettlement organization that we had built an amazing relationship with, and they said, we have a family of 4. They're homeless, they're from Syria, and would you and your family please take them in for 2 weeks, because right now they're living in a hotel. They've been in there a month. They got $4,000 of welcome money, which is what the government gives all refugees, regardless of size of the family. And they had spent $2,200 of it on this extended stay for this family. And that money's supposed to go to first, last, and security. So, I just come back from Calais, France, where they did it. That's one of a camp that stole my heart. They did a very inhumane eviction of people from that camp, and I was there, and I had just come back, and I was home 2 days, and my poor husband, I've just dragged him along on this crazy ride, and he managed to juggle everything while I was gone, the kids, the house, everything that needs to happen, and still work. And he's really been supportive of me. So I'm laying in bed and I'm reading this email from this organization 2 days after being home from France, and I'm like, oh my God, he is gonna kill me when I ask him this. So I read him the email, and I was cringing because I didn't know what his answer was gonna be, and he said, of course we will. And so through a lot of red tape, because this had never happened before, where a host family got to have a refugee family in their home. So we had to go through lawyers, and 48 hours later, this family that we knew nothing about entered our home. The only thing we knew is that they were probably, cleaner than any of our neighbors, as opposed to for background checks, because these people had been vetted so highly. So I didn't feel any skepticism about them being around my children or my family. And I can say that them coming into our life, it was full circle for me to go to the camps, to see what they had been through to get to France. I met Syrians those were the people on the boat that I met in these refugee camps. And to finally have them in the United States and then in my home, it was just a gift to me and my family. So it started as a 2-week commitment, and it turned into a month, and it turned into me and my husband looking at each other saying, we can never let them go unless it's a forward motion. We don't want them to move laterally or down. So we, by accident, we created a model of how you can take a family and you can put them through this program, and in 4 to 6 months, you can have a self-sustaining, independent family. And we've taken 4 families. We're working on the Aloes, and we're bringing them through that model. And a statistic that was given to me that is through Governor Baker's office was that refugees in the United States have a 75% chance of becoming homeless once government assistance backs off. So to me, that's unacceptable. Failure is not an option. So, we're working hard. Meeting Sean has been life-changing. He is a force. For him and Donna to have taken on 7 people that were in just an awful situation. You know, when your friend comes to you and she's a social worker and she's just visited their house and she says, I don't know whether to cry or throw up. If DCF saw these children from 13 to 2 living in this environment, they'd be taken away. We need to get them out. And I posted a post on Facebook that was, you know, I've lost all dignity now. I throw big asks out there. I have no pride whatsoever now when it comes to this. So I threw this ask out, is anybody in Carlisle willing to host a family of 7? I got one response, and it was Donna and Sean. And the next, I said to the family, we have a place for you to stay in Carlisle. And they didn't know me. They knew, like, of the work that I had been doing. They were throwing their clothes in black trash bags, and they were like, take us now, we want to go. And so it was within 2 days, we had them living in Sean's in-law apartment. And, you know, I think a lot of stuff has happened. And Sean has been a great support, and he is committed to this family, as am I and my organization. And, you know, we're not big. We focus on one family at a time. You know, I became overwhelmed many times looking at what was going on across the Middle East and here and saying, this is too big for me. You know, and I think a lot of people feel that way. I want to help, but how? But if you pare it down to one family, one person, save one, save a generation. That's our motto. That's what we do. So we'll follow these people through into independence. They have become our family, so you know we're never going to leave them. We'll always support them, but they will be self-sustaining, which is huge. And I think also it shows them how valuable they are to us. When you embrace them and you show them how to live as an American through a mentorship or host program, which we have out there now, you just enrich communities. And you also give the children, like, you know, I'm thinking of my children. It's, you know, the parents, yes, they need help, but if you look at the children, that's the next generation. Those are the children that are going to grow up to adults and walk around with my children, or your children, or your grandchildren, or my grandchildren. And so it's important to give them worth, and they get lost when they're in lower socioeconomic city schools. It just happens that way. They're overwhelmed. But if you can place a family in Carlisle and send 3 school-age children that speak no English after being in a school system for 6 months, you can send them to Carlisle Public School or Concord and know that they are going to fly. Arab American children, they have a hand up now. So our idea is to place these families, and I will defer to you for Donna's poignant statement. Yes, so. What is that? That quote that she has.
Oh, well, first of all, how about a round of applause for Jennifer and I'm going to get to Donna's statement in a minute, but just a little bit more about this, just to reinforce what Eyes on Refugees stands for. Please be in touch with us if you'd like any more information. Write down eyesonrefugees.com so you can see more. .org, thank you very much. .org, so you can learn more about what's happening here. You know, some of the data that backs up what Jennifer was saying is that the number of Syrian refugees has doubled in Massachusetts. There's a gap between our ability to serve them and the needs that they have. And so these are the kinds of things that we're doing. They are put in communities like Lowell and Lawrence and Springfield and Worcester and Lynn. And this brings me to Donna's great quote, is that refugees are placed in towns that they can afford. What really needs to happen is they need to be placed in towns that can afford them. And that's what we've been able to do with a couple of families and perhaps more. And it falls on people like you, people like us, to bridge this gap. So I would also like to take this moment to thank you all for the personal donations that you've made to Eyes on Refugees, for the resettlement fund for the Allo family, and also to First Parish. The social action group here made a very generous $5,000 donation. So we've raised a total of $50,000 for this family, and we'll be carefully using those funds to help set them up in some kind of permanent housing situation for the years to come. So thank you all for your individual efforts, and thank you for the share. So, empty nesters meet the Allo family. Donna and I were empty nesters. We just launched the sixth of our blended family off to college. Samantha is off at Mass College of Art. My three are older. Donna's three are at college, and so they're all off and beyond. And we're sitting at home wondering, how can we do something with our time? What can we do that would be useful? You may know that I was in kind of a rough bike accident last year, and so I was coming back from that, and that gave me some time to think about how I wanted to spend my life. The general election last year got our attention, and we thought maybe we can get involved on a local level. And that's how we met this amazing force. Talk about a force. I'm just standing on her shoulders. This woman just will knock down any barrier to get things done for these families. And so we've, Jennifer showed up in our home, and we thought, well, we're going to meet this we're going to meet this suburban do-gooder and find out what's going on. And in walks the most down-to-earth, woman with the most heartfelt, unpretentious statement about what she was doing. And she left, and Don and I looked at each other and said, well, we're on board. We've got some extra space. There's a family in need. I am going to skip the video. There's a video that you might have seen. There's a little TV story, but I'm supposed to be a storyteller, so I'll just tell this story and see if I can get by without it. So there they are. That's our new extended family. We looked out of our house window on February 12th, February 13th. The snow had fallen. There was about a foot of snow on the ground, and it looked like a scene from Dr. Zhivago was coming up my driveway. So from left to right, Donna is on the far left with her arm around Heba, who calls her sister now. Heba's the mother. Next to Heba is Iman. She's 13. She's every inch a 13-year-old, somewhat self-conscious, in puberty, wears a veil to school, rolls her eyes at her little brothers who make an awful lot of noise and annoy her. And she's really trying, imagine being 13 years old and trying to find your way in life anyway as a 13-year-old girl is hard enough, but in a new country, having just come from a refugee camp. And then there's me in the middle, up on the top there, that's Anas, he's 11. Jabbar, his brother, is 7. The little darling sitting in my lap, that's Sidra. Sidra, there's not a camera that Sidra doesn't want to put her face in front of. She's like, Uncle Sean, Uncle Sean, Uncle Sean, if I have my camera on, and then she does this big smile. I don't know how they're going to get a veil on that young woman when she's 13, honestly. This maniac, this is Bara, he's 2 years old, born in a Jordanian refugee camp. So he has all of the limits that living in a refugee camp must have, given him, i.e. none. He climbs up trees in our house, he climbs on the furniture, he runs around everywhere. But he's amazing, and he's an amazing kid. And the father, Mohammed, is a skilled woodworker. He has a job working for a company in Boston in their mill shop. They do renovations of nice high-end renovations in the greater Boston area. And he works building cabinets and tabletops and is doing very well according to his boss. He's had 2 raises so far in the job. He commutes all the way into Boston every day. A very hardworking and humble man. So this is now my extended family. They're noisy. We had to make ourselves a little bit uncomfortable to fit them into 650 square feet of in-law apartment in our house. But what we've gotten from living with them has been just extraordinary. And we've learned a little bit more about their journey, about where they came from. They're from the town of Daraa in the south of Syria. It's on the border with Jordan. It was the town that the first protests during Arab Spring started. They're basically teenage boys tagging local buildings with slogans about freedom and democracy, who, for their trouble, were shot, which caused riots, which started the war. In this town of Daraa, a middle-class town, they lived in an apartment building with their parents and the other brother and their families. They're not from, decades of a war-torn country, but they were living a comfortable middle-class life, and they had to leave in the middle of the night. That's their apartment. The parents lived here. One brother lived here, and the second brother on the third floor. That is after they left, but while they were there, a car bomb blew up in the middle, in front of their building, blew in the windows, showered glass on the sleeping Sidra, who was only a few months old at the time. The mother said, we didn't have time to change her diaper. We put the whole family onto a truck, drove over the border into Jordan, and they were in refugee camps in Jordan for 4 to 5 years. Right, exactly. And I was talking to Mohammed one day in the winter saying, when the weather's nice, we'll be able to go outside and sit outside. And I was showing him pictures of the house in the summertime, and he picked up his phone and he said, let me show you my house in Syria. And that was the picture that was on his phone. Heartbreaking. Absolutely heartbreaking. But we're beyond that now, and here are more shots of the kids that you might have seen. That's the 2 boys and Iman, the 13-year-old. So Iman, Jabbar on the left, and Anas on the right. They're in the Carlisle schools, and I can't say enough about the reception we've had locally by many in the Carlisle community, but particularly the school. Jennifer and Donna were there for a meeting with the mother and the teachers, and the school has just really wrapped their arms around this family. The school has a set of values that they post on the wall, like many schools do. And they are things like acceptance, and kindness, and generosity. And the kids are getting a chance to live those values interacting with this family. We heard a mother say, oh, you're the ones with the Syrian family. My son came home from school last week, and he said, Mom, where's Syria? So they Googled where Syria was and what's happening in Syria. So they learned a little bit about geography and about politics. And she said, why? She said, well, there's a Syrian boy in my class. How do you say good morning in Arabic? And they Googled good morning in Arabic. And so he got to say good morning to Anas the next day. I share a driveway with a neighbor who are lovely people. And I know that their political views are a bit more to the right than my own. Let's put it that way. I was a bit nervous about telling them that there was going to be a family of refugees living in my house. So I called Hunter, the woman, and I said, so we've got some guests living with us for a while. You'll probably see them in the driveway. They don't look like anybody else that lives in Carlisle. It's a family of Syrian refugees. So she said, okay, fine, that's good. Well, good for you. Kind of a little bit cold. Comes to my door the next day, knocks on the door, and I looked and thought, oh boy, this could be a confrontation. I opened the door. She thrusts a $100 gift certificate to Kohl's in my hand, gives me a bag of clothes, and a scooter for the kids. And she said, we have a playset that my kids are too old for in my yard. Have the kids go over and use it. So there's a refugee resettlement program happening on the playset in her backyard. Little did she know what she's asked for. So, and these kids arrived nervous, shy, literally shell-shocked, saying very little. And now they're running around the yard, they're arguing with each other, they're fighting, they're laughing, they're talking. Even the boy on the left, Jabbar, and I can't help but tell these stories, but I really want to bring this to life for you all. He's so comfortable now that he teases me in front of my wife. Donna, in English, Donna said, Jabbar, how was school today? He said, oh, school very good. And school bus, kids on the school bus, nice? Yes, school bus, very nice. Bus driver, is he nice? He goes, bus driver, like Uncle Sean. He say, you sit down, you be quiet. I'm like, oh, buddy, thanks a lot, you know. So they become extended family. There's a whole group of people that are putting their arms around this family, helping them with English lessons and filling in government forms and helping them with finances and all sorts of things. But our job is to give them a hand up, not a handout. We want them to get stable. We're waiting to hear about some options for housing. I wish I'd had some great news to announce today, but we're close. We're edging closer to it, so we'll keep our fingers crossed that we will have a home for them locally so that they can get stable and continue for as long as possible in the local schools. Oh, yes, sure, please.
Is Heba. Heba, the mother of this family, said to me, being in Sean's house is the safest she has felt since pre-war in Syria. And, that was another statement that was made, along with the school saying to us, we can't let them go. We have to find a way to keep them in this community. And Sean and Donna have brought them a great sense of security that they haven't had in a long time. So there are a lot of funny stories, but there's also this,
Right, and it's great. And Heba, the mother, her English is getting better every day. A volunteer tutor shows up and gives her English lessons. Very loud English lessons, I have to say. You go outside, I stay inside. And then we hear Heba repeat that over and over again, coming up from the downstairs. Just more pictures of the kids. There's the beautiful Sidra, who, as you can see, is not shy about cameras. And then this little guy here, who runs around the house just pulling books off the bookshelves. And, every inch of 2-year-old, but has not had quite the good fortune that many of our own 2-year-olds have had. So there's the kids. Here's the boys, another little story. So two of the boys, Anas and Jabbar, we got some bikes. Friends of mine helped tune them up. And so we went to Pedal Power in Acton with the boys, and I said to Joyce, the owner, I need to hook these 2 kids up with helmets. Instead of wearing a helmet, riding a bike to a Syrian kid from a refugee camp, they're like, what are you, well, that's the weirdest thing I ever heard, because they're constantly tripping and falling and cutting themselves, and no one seems to care. So they fitted them for helmets. I went to pay Joyce, and she said, no, that's on me. That's our gift. Just another example. Everywhere I go, I meet people who hear this story and want to give in some wonderful way. I now have a standard guy who drives me to the airport on business trips. He's a Moroccan guy named Abdel. He heard about this. He texted me somehow, said, I will take you to the airport. I won't charge you. So he gave me a free trip to the airport. Now I use him as my business driver, so he's getting business out of this. The first day he showed up, he knocked on the door. The kids were there. He shook hands with Mohammed, put $60 in his hand, said, buy the kids pizza on me. So things like that just keep happening. Sorry, I keep thinking of the stories. And there's Donna's great quote. The immigrants that come here are housed in towns that they can ultimately afford. And we need to put them in towns that can afford them. 1 or 2 or 4 immigrant families in a town like Carlisle or Concord or Newton, or Needham. We know of a house in Needham that will be housing a family, is the way to go. Lowell, while there are wonderful agencies working really hard, they're overwhelmed. They're one in hundreds of families there. So we're trying to figure out this model so that we can take one at a time, have a church community like this perhaps, put our arms around them, and help them with the hand up that they need to be successful. So that's Jennifer's story, my story, a little bit about the Allo family. Let's now start it up for that conversation I promised that we'd have. Yes, Suzanne. So the question was, how did the school respond to our request about educating the Allos? We didn't make a request, we just sent them to school. And then the school just did it. In fact, the school's response has been overwhelming. You were there for that school morning meeting. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
So just as Sean said, the school didn't bat an eye. They were concerned that they were starting so late in the year. And, we talked a little bit about their trauma. The 3 youngest probably suffer from the most trauma. And, we talked about special needs surrounding that trauma. So we went into that meeting and they had it all outlined, like, let's talk about the history, of this family, and let's identify possible needs. It it was a beautiful meeting. I mean, these people, you could tell they really cared. The superintendent was there. The principals were there. Will Verbitz is the student support services was there and running the meeting. And, you know, we talked, Heba was there. And so she was able to tell about the bombing that happened. There was another incident where Anas almost got shot, and she was able to get him out of the way. And, you know, there were tears everywhere. And you just realize that they come with such a unique set of circumstances. And so, you know, they have reached out to us as they've identified needs. And so one of them was, Anas was suffering from a lot of anxiety in school. At different points in the day, he would start pacing around, and he had to get out. He had to get out. And when we dug deeper with the school and with Phoebe, who's our Arabic interpreter and who knows this family well through Head Start for Bara, the youngest, we found that it was that he was worried about his brothers and sisters. He was scared. He didn't know they were safe. And so now what the school has done is proactively made times for them to meet. And then, of course, as necessary, he can meet them in a safe place, and they can talk for a minute and then, you know, go their way. And he knows that they're okay. So it's accommodations like that. They've also reached out to us as far as tutors. How can we tutor these children who are functioning way below the grade level they should be? And we know that, you know, the school system standards out here is very high. And so these children are really underperforming. And with a little digging, Sean hooked us up with this amazing not-for-profit called LexRap. And they are based in Lexington, and what they do is they offer tutoring services. And they just rolled out a brand new model, and we happened to come along and make a request. Can you tutor these children? And they said, of course we can come to their house and tutor them, no problem. We can go one step further. We can actually assign each child an interpreter to follow them through the curriculum, through the day, and talk to them in both English and Arabic. Did you understand this? Let me explain it to you. And it's been amazing, and it's free. You know, it took a little bit to get them installed into the Carlisle public school system because they've never done this. There's a lot of red tape, and you know they weren't exactly sure, you know, quarrying and liability and that type of thing. But they've made a tremendous. These children have made tremendous progress in just a few weeks and months. So, yeah, it's been great to see. So that answers that question.
I was just wondering about the extended family that was living with them in the bombed-out apartment building. What has become of them?
I think that one brother is in Jordan.
Yeah, I think a brother is in Jordan and dad is still in Syria. Our brother is in Jordan, the father is still in Syria. It has been not well, he's been in ill health, and the family have been able to actually save a little bit of money and save money to the dad for some surgery. So they do talk back and forth by phone quite a bit. They don't know whether this is whether they're going to be here temporarily or whether they're ever going to go back. Mohammed said something to me the other day. Well, I talked to him a lot about the family. They had a farm near Daraa, and so we've gone walking in the cranberry bog, and when he's there at the cranberry bog, he said, "Oh, this is like the farm. This is like Syria. I feel, it feels like home again." And then just on the deck, night before last, he said, "Before, when I come here, Syria and America in my heart. Syria, America. Now, the same."
Housing here in Concord and in Carlisle is expensive. Do you have any thoughts on solving the issue of the people being able to live in Carlisle or Concord? My own children.
Yeah, sure. No, that's That is hard, and it's going to take some flexibility on the towns. If the towns want to get behind this in an official way, we'd be happy to talk to them about that. They were in line for affordable housing in Concord, but they don't have very many 4-bedrooms, and the regulations mean that if you have 5 children, you have to have a 4-bedroom home. So we were in line for one, and we tried to get them to bend the rules and offered to pretend to have one child live with us on paper to see if that, but so it's complicated. There is some affordable housing. The whole 40B structure is a tough one, but what we're hoping to do is, at this point, we're looking for homes that, there may be a home that is a little bit more modest, that might need a little bit fixing up, and that maybe a family would be interested in doing their own piece of personal charity by making the house available at lower than the market rent. But there are other housing authorities in other local towns that have got a bit more housing stock available. We were thinking, boy, they're settled. We've got them stable in Carlisle for a few months. They'll move to a Chelmsford, a Westford, a Dingsboro, somewhere perhaps closer to a Needham. But Jennifer and Donna came back from that meeting at the school, both with tears in their eyes, saying, "We've got to figure out a way to keep them here. There must be a way." And so we're uncovering every rock to see if we can find someplace. But it is a challenge. Maybe if we can publicize this model and if we can make it successful, it'll spark this kind of creative thinking in other communities.
And just to kind of piggyback onto that, our organization has just now become available to apply for grants, and one of the asks is for a multifamily. We're not sure what town it would be, but with this model we can move in 4 to 6 families. We can put them through, once they've been screened as ready to, they're eager to assimilate, there's a head of household that can work, and there'll be certain things that they have to adhere to. They move in, they don't pay rent, they save up that money, and then in 4 to 6, the 6-month mark, they're ready to go and rent from a reputable landlord, which is not the case now. They're actually renting from slumlords because they have no credit and they have no landlord history. And, those are the 2 biggest obstacles. So housing is a big one, and I'm hoping we can get one multifamily and just keep duplicating. Or we get more people who are available to host, because spreading people out into these affluent communities is such a beautiful thing. We have one in the works of Brookline, so we're hoping to place someone in Brookline. We had a house offered to us in Townsend, beautiful house. Unfortunately, it's too far away for resources like that Lowell Health Center. And then we also had a house offered in Needham, and we engaged a contractor who's actually Mohammed's boss, and he said, if Mohammed will benefit from this, then I'm on board. And I'll do whatever I can to call in favors and sub this and rehab the house. It was a beautiful house. And Mohammed and Heba said no. Heba prayed on it and said it wasn't the place for her family. And it later came out that she just wanted to be near Sean and Donna and was scared. So.
And honestly, that could sound a little bit ungrateful, but as you said, Heba said, this is the first time we felt safe in 5 years, and we thought, all right, let's just give them some time to catch their breath. And any other questions?
If you put several families in one housing unit together, they'd have people to talk to in their own language, and they could rely on them. On the other hand, it might make it harder to assimilate. So I'm wondering, do you have thoughts on the relative advantages of having a family all by themselves in Carlisle versus with other families?
I think it's a double-edged sword. I think you're right. There are benefits and there's a downside to it. So as long as they don't isolate themselves and become a self-contained unit and do not assimilate, then it can be a good thing because it can be affordable and they can feel support and they can have people from their culture. You want them to assimilate, but you don't want their cultural heritage to disappear completely. The Allo family are friends with Mori and Fatoum, who live in Westwood, who was the first family that Jennifer hosted. They're friends, so they see each other a lot, but they also spend time, learning language and so forth. So you have to, it's a double-edged sword. You can probably...
Well, that's an excellent question, and I would say, in getting to know these families, I obviously had some of my thoughts of how they were going to answer certain questions, but I, as an NGO, I struggled ethically with, if we remove these families from Lowell, are we taking them away from a community, other Arabs, other Muslims that, that is their support system. And I talked to a doctor who is a mentor to me, and his name is Dr. Wasim Attar, and he's the only dentist in Carlisle. And he happens to be Syrian, and Syria is very close to his heart. So we connected. He's also a part of SAMS, the Syrian American Medical Society, and which is a very amazing not-for-profit. And we met, and we would talk about this. And he said, Jennifer, you really have to think about the kids. It's they need a hand up. They are going to be the next ones, and so that's where your focus should be. You're not doing them harm by taking them out. You're actually doing good for them. So after that, I started talking to the families, and it was so interesting. They told me, I said, are you going to miss, do you have any friends, other Muslims, or your, mosque? And they said, we don't want to be around other Arabs. We lived in Jordan. We got taken advantage. We were exploited by Arabs. And all we've seen since we've arrived is goodness from Americans. And I said, I laughed and to myself, and I thought, well, of course, right? We travel in packs. If I come, if you come, we bring good people. So that's all they've seen. So I think it's a good thing. They want to be around Americans. I think they're getting, just like Sean said, we have ESL teachers that are coming in. We have volunteers who used to teach English coming by. So the communication, I would say Mohammed was he didn't speak much English, and now, with just in a matter of weeks, he started being able to, pick up words, and, now we can have a decent conversation without Google Translate. Heba, his wife, she's really come into her own these past few weeks. Yes, and she's just very content and she's eager to learn, and that's what I think. Their eagerness is so motivating for Sean, for Donna, for me to just what else can we do? How can we take this another step farther? They want to go far, and they get a lot of support. So in the model of the apartment, that situation, we have a liaison, and that liaison has a spin-off of supports all in place, and they're all responsible for helping with different areas to help assimilation. ESL teaching, how do you take care of your DTA and not let your food stamps lapse? How do you get a bank account? If you're going to drive, how do you get a learner's permit? And I think the biggest thing is job skill matching. Mohammed was placed working night shift in a plastic factory, and his wife was home with 5 children and on the first floor of a very bad neighborhood, and people would knock on her windows. There were mice everywhere. She said she never slept while he was at work. They would sleep when they came home. And, it's terrible. You just, to hear about that is awful. So I lost my train of thought on that one, but.
So their English is coming along. The kids, they're just picking it up. it's wonderful. Mom and Dad, we've seen huge improvements. And what's interesting as the language gets better, their personalities emerge. So Donna now goes to Market Basket, which is the most favorite family excursion for the whole family, with Heba, and they do grocery shopping together and chat like old friends.
So how are you handling the transportation needs and then learning how to drive?
Lots of volunteers are providing rides. There have been offers of daycare for the kids and rides back and forth to daycare. 2 families have donated cars. They were donated a sedan, a used car that was donated to the family. They were now upgrading. Another family donated a larger car that can fit all 5 kids in. That's about to happen. Dad failed his driving test the first time. I took him out one night. Try explaining to a Syrian who doesn't speak English the notion of right turn on red in Massachusetts. Wait, red, we go, green, I stop, I don't go, and I'm like, well, yeah, you can, except, and I'm like, yeah, just go, buddy, you'll be fine. Did that answer your question?
The time it takes to teach someone how to drive can be substantial.
Right, well, he was a driver in Syria. He drove for at least 10 years, so he knew how to drive a car. It's just a matter of learning our arcane laws and get his license, and we hope that someday his wife Heba will get her license. A quick comment on something that you said earlier about coming to a town like Carlisle. It's just the way the children are talking now, and Iman, the oldest daughter, I was saying, well, asking them, well, what do you want to do in life? And she said, I want to be a doctor. She said, I want to be a doctor for eyes, was more specifically what she was looking for. So their aspirations, because of where they are, have really grown beautifully. And I said to Don, I said, my goal is I want to be at each kid's college graduation. If you would like to get business cards for Eyes on Refugees, they're here. If you want to maybe even just start to hand those around. Lots of people have ideas about how they'd like to help. I would suggest the best thing to do would be to be in touch with me, or more particularly with Jennifer and Eyes on Refugees. Donations are always welcome. We've done well with the Allo family donation. We'd like more donations for Eyes on Refugees so we can replicate this model for other families. And I see, I hope for a long-term relationship between the Allo family and maybe other families that come in and this church and other houses of worship locally.
Are they helping to provide resources?
So the resettlement organization is responsible for them, and to become, not any city can just say, okay, I want to host refugees. You have to go through a vetting process that's quite laborious, and it's, it takes a long time. But this resettlement organization gets a tick list of all the things they have to do within a certain time frame. Lowell has a lot of resources, and as far as the government, there's a lot of panic right now about how much and how long the funding will go on, which is very small anyways, for the refugee family. So, in hearing that was my other panic attack, is we've got to get them sorted, because if they lose their cash assistance or their food stamps, they're in big trouble. So to give you an example, a family of 4 gets first the $4,000 in welcome money, but then they also have the loan from the government to pay back for their air flight, their air travel for all their family. So they come in with already some debt to the government, and the $4,000, which is supposed to go to first, last, and security deposit on an apartment. The other thing that they get is DTA, which is Department of Transitional Assistance. So a family of 4 gets $333 twice a month. So that's $600, right? $660, and that's for cash to be used on their apartment. Okay, so then for our food stamps, which is SNAP, is what it's called, a family of 4 gets $120 a week for food. And so that is guaranteed for 3 months. It used to be 6 months and sometimes even up to a year, depending on the family's situation, if they had extenuating circumstances. But, it's very limited help that the government is giving. So these organizations their hands are tied as to how much they can do. So that's kind of where we come in and say, aha, we can make them successful by using the government's funding to our advantage. Like, if we had no mortgage on a multifamily, we would put this family in, they wouldn't pay rent, they would agree to give us their DTA every month, their cash assistance. We would put that in a little account with them, for them, and at the end of their 6 months, they now have a little nest egg, which they never would have had, right? So that's just one of the beauties of the model. I mean, I can't say enough about how the resettlement agencies are struggling. They're overwhelmed, and they feel bad about it. They know they're falling short, but they're using models that are 97 years old, one particular resettlement organization. And how can you do that when, this is an epic event in history? It's bigger than it's a larger movement of people than World War II. And so you really have to ask yourself, how do we change the model? And I think that they're working on that, but look, I work at Mass General. I'm a nurse, and I know what a big institution that's been around for 100 years. Change is hard. It's very difficult. So I know that the organizations are struggling about how they can redo their model. But in the meantime, people are languishing in squalor and being left to just sit there and wonder what to do next. I actually accompanied Maury, who was my family hosted for 3 months, to a DTA meeting just recently and met his caseworker. And he had let his benefits lapse. And so we had to go through this process that was just ridiculous. And now, imagine not speaking English and wondering why you have no food stamps. So he does speak pretty good English, but I went and I talked to her, and she said, how come people aren't doing this? Like, where are more people that are doing this type of work? And I said, you tell me, because I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I've looked everywhere to see if there's anyone doing this, filling in the gap. And she said, this is a problem. We've identified it. And she said, I can't believe it. Give me your business card. I have 4 families that I know off the top of my head that would be the exact people who want to assimilate, work hard, and make it work here in America. So that was, just validation that this is a problem, And I think if we don't bring them into the community in a positive way, what I saw go on in Greece is, when I was working there, is in Thessaloniki, the Greeks were very much like, you come to our house, you shower. We saw that on social media, how welcoming the Greeks were. And then they got overwhelmed with, their socioeconomic situation is bad, and now they're inundated with Syrian refugees mostly. And they've turned now. You can see the refugees begging on the street. That's what they've been reduced to. They have to. They wouldn't do that if they didn't have to. And so now Greeks are a little bit more, okay, now this is starting to get a little bit ridiculous, and that changes the face of the refugee, really. It turns it into something negative, as opposed to if we embrace them and we can really make them a positive thing and enrich our communities. So,
Sean, can you talk a little bit about the things that were hard for you and Donna in doing this?
That's a very good question. Making the decision was not hard. I think we were both feeling, I'll speak for myself, I was feeling particularly fortunate that I survived this accident. I was well treated. I was going to recover fully. I have a very good life. And so we were just in the frame of mind of a great deal of gratitude. And we were talking to one another about how we could find ways to help. And so we got involved with a local political organization that put us in touch with Jennifer. So the decision wasn't hard. There had been more blessings on us as a family than I could have even counted before we did it. We're getting much more out of this than we are giving. Sometimes what's hard is when I'm on the phone, because I'm conducting a lot of business from home, and it's a relatively small house and it's an in-law apartment. There's not a great deal of sound insulation, and the 2-year-old will start banging on the door and screaming in the middle of the day. And my children will attest to how much patience I had with little children when I raised them, which was probably at the lower end of the scale, let's say. So sometimes it's hard and frustrating in that regard, but those are fleeting. So I think probably the hardest thing now is the fight to find them good, safe, affordable housing in a community in which they can flourish. I think that's been the hard thing. The relationship with the family and giving over a chunk of our house has not been hard. But I think it's frustrating trying to figure out how to help them take the next step. That's the difficult one. Yes? What are the kids going to do all summer? We've had wonderful offers of radically reduced daycare and camp. The Fen school camp has made a very generous offer. So we might have to do a little bit of fundraising, but Concord Academy, Concord Rec has offered. So yeah. And Mum is still at home. So yes.
Maybe we're ready to go?
Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much for coming.